Before we get started, I just wanted to share a quick disclaimer. This podcast is based on my personal experiences and what I've lived through. Some episodes include difficult topics like trauma and abuse that may be triggering for some listeners. If you need support, I've included resources in the episode description. All stories are shared from my perspective, and names, identities, and specific details have been changed or removed to protect the privacy of those involved. Any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental. My goal is to help others feel seen, raise awareness, and remind anyone listening that they are not alone.
Hey, no masks, no bullshit, just truth. So, I've been in more than one abusive relationship, unfortunately. And for years, that left me with the same question on repeat. Was it me? Was I the problem? Was I somehow attracting this? That question didn't come in loud. It sneaks in. It starts as like this little whisper in the back of your mind when you're lying awake at night and you're just staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of basically the wreckage of another broken relationship. It starts as that pit in your stomach when you recognize the patterns that you swore that you'd never repeat. And it lives in your body before you even know the name of it. It's like it takes over you. You have tight shoulders, you have a heavy chest. It's this sinking weight in your gut. It's a question that lives in the gut of almost every survivor who has found themselves in an abusive relationship or in that cycle more than once. The shame is so quiet, but yet so fucking deep that you don't even recognize that it's a question until it's a full-blown accusation that you're making against yourself. Until you're standing in front of the mirror, just wondering. You're not even wondering. You're convinced that maybe you really are the problem. I'd look at my life and I'd see the pattern of chaos, of broken trust, of people who claimed that they loved me but ultimately destroyed me. Different faces, different names, but the aftermath always looked the same. It was like running and walking through the ruins of something that I genuinely thought was real. And it was in the darkest of my, the darkest moments that I've experienced. I thought the only common denominator, I didn't even think it. I truly believed it was me. I wholeheartedly believed that something in me was defective. Like I had weakness stitched within my DNA. And I basically I called destruction to my doorstep. Like I was somehow attracting this. I eventually, over time, I thought love wasn't meant for me or safety wasn't meant for me to have. And the shame of that thought, like thinking those things, it's paralyzing. It kept me small, quiet, questioning myself every time I opened my mouth, every time I would feel too much, or every time I dared to think that I wanted something better for myself. It's the kind of shame that makes you apologize for your own existence, that makes you believe you deserve the bad things that happen to you. It's like having this heavy cloak that you wear, and it isolates you from the world and from love, from hope. The weight of it felt like an anchor in my soul, dragging me down. It was making it impossible for me to see a way out. Ultimately, it was like I became a prisoner of my own self-doubt. But looking back, I see the real reason now, and I'm grateful for that. But it was because I never processed the first time I was abused. I was taught to stay silent, to pretend I was fine, and to move on. Society told me that my pain wasn't a big deal, and the narrative was simple. You survived, now move on. So I did. I put a brave face on, and I buried the trauma. I convinced myself that time would magically heal everything. But silence doesn't heal you. It doesn't protect you. It leaves you wide fucking open for more abuse. It basically leaves you as a target for the next person who can spot the unhealed wound that you never processed. The trauma isn't gone. It's pretty much just dormant, waiting for a trigger. And an unhealed wound is like a siren song for those who prey on vulnerability. They can see the hesitation in your eyes, or the way you flinch at a raised voice, or the way we rush to apologize even when we've done nothing wrong. They see like the fear and the longing for safety, and they know exactly how to exploit it. And that's what makes us so vulnerable. It's not a flaw in our character. It's a wound in our history that was never processed, never healed. So let's talk about the pattern that I had. So as I said, I've been in more than one abusive relationship, and I hate admitting that, and it's sad and it breaks my heart. But a big thing is none of them looked the same. One experience, it became extremely physical. It was loud and violent, and it left me bruised, shattered, and ultimately I was laying in a hospital bed. It was undeniable. The physical evidence of the abuse was visible for everybody to see. But the emotional scars that came with that, they were so much deeper. People could see the bruises and they could see the damage, but no one could see the way my soul felt like it just like cracked in half. The terror didn't fade just because the marks eventually did. That kind of terror, it gets into your bones. It changes the way you walk into a room, the way you look at people, the way you hold yourself. It's a ghost that follows you along after the physical threat is gone. And I was left with like a constant low-grade hum of anxiety. It was the feeling of danger was always lurking around the corner, even in the safest spaces. My body learned to be afraid, and that fear, it became my new default without even realizing it. A relationship I was in, it was extremely verbal. It was like a constant smorgasbord of degrading, cruel words, and it was just emotional cruelty. It was like this slow poison. I like to call it a death by 1,000 paper cuts. I was told I was stupid, worthless, my opinion didn't matter. I was the root to all problems, and it literally just chipped me down piece by piece until there was nothing left. Sometimes the words, they felt louder than any punch ever did. They echoed in my head long after the argument was over, and I'd replay them, questioning if maybe they were right. And it's been years, and I still do. I'd just sit in silence, shrinking smaller and smaller, trying to make a sound, trying not to, because I feel like any sound, anything I said was like an invitation for another attack. The damage, it didn't come all at once. It came in layers, each insult just stripping away another piece of who I was. This form of abuse, it's so hard to explain to others because there's no visible evidence. And you just feel yourself disappearing. You can't point out a single moment that caused it. It's just a slow, agonizing fade of losing yourself. And then another relationship was deeply, deeply manipulative and narcissistic. And this one was by far the worst experience that almost caused me to take my life. On top of the mental load of everything else piled up along with what this relationship did to me was catastrophic. This relationship seemed like it was often a quiet one, but it was this suffocating control that eventually led to many moments of explosive rage with lots of yelling and the cruelest words ever spoken to me that live rent-free in my head. And it terrifies me to think that those thoughts might never go away. It's something I'm working on. But it was this small series of small betrayals of lies that were so convincing that they made me question my own sanity. I was constantly walking on eggshells and desperately trying to decode his mood, to anticipate his needs, to avoid triggering the next punishment or another round of explosive rage, or anything so cruel that literally cut like a knife being said to me. That relationship, it felt like living inside of a maze that had no fucking exit. I studied his tone, the look in his eyes, the way his footsteps sounded, the way he closed doors. When he would walk into a room, I was searching for clues, trying to predict which version of him I was about to get. Every day was a fucking day of survival. And even when he wasn't yelling, I couldn't just breathe freely because the silence, it felt just as dangerous. It was a game of psychological chess, and I was always fucking losing. I would contort myself into whatever shape he needed me to be. I would always basically become like a chameleon to cater to avoid being abused. But as I was contorting myself, I would find out the rules to the game changed without warning. But I became a master at reading these invisible cues, deciphering the hidden meanings in their words. But that emotional toll it took on me was catastrophic. And it broke me in ways that I still can't comprehend. So the abusers, they were different. The way each abused me was different. Their personalities were so different. Abuse doesn't always show up in the same way. But the cycle we fall into as a survivor is almost always very similar. I was told I was too much, then I was told I wasn't enough, and then in the same breath I was told I was too good for them, but that was when they were apologizing. But the message was a cruel paradox. In one moment, my emotions, my needs, my very existence was a burden, and I was too much. Then the next, my love, my loyalty, my efforts were not sufficient, and I wasn't enough. The way they made me feel was the same. The way my body would flinch was the same. The way I would retreat and isolate myself was the same, and the way I would blame myself for their actions was the same. That paradox broke something in me. How could I be both too much and not enough at the same time? And still, I twisted myself into not trying to fit into whatever box they needed me in. I silenced myself, then spoke louder, then tried to disappear completely, always searching for the version of me that might finally be acceptable. But I was always failing. But the truth is, no version of me would have ever been enough for them, because their goal was never love, it was control. Their shifting expectations, it kept me off balance, and I was constantly striving for an impossible standard. It was a game that I was destined to lose, and I felt the profound failure of it every single fucking day. And eventually it made me feel like I was clinically fucking insane. But that's because trauma literally primes the brain for repetition until it's worked through, and it's not a conscious choice. I wasn't secretly seeking out chaos. My nervous system, it simply wired to respond to what it knows. My body, my mind remembered the feeling of fear, the adrenaline surge, the hypervigilance. It's this cruel kind of similar comfort, and it feels less terrifying than the unknown. It's basically the devil that you know. My nervous system would recognize the familiar signs of a volatile environment, and it went into the state of heightened alert, a state that became my new normal. And that's the sick part. Chaos started to feel like home. My body didn't relax in peace. It braced for the next storm. I didn't trust calm because calm always felt temporary, like the silence before an explosion. I thought I was choosing these relationships, but the truth is my nervous system was already conditioned without realizing. It wasn't love that I recognized, it was danger disguised as love. And I kept asking myself why. But this is what I learned. I always asked myself, why me? Why does this keep happening? I felt like I was broken or flawed in some fundamental way. But what I learned is that a wound isn't processed, it doesn't go away. It festers. And it leaves a scar on your soul, and that scar has a specific feel and a specific ache. It rewires your brain, the nervous system, the attachment system, your self-worth. And it tells you on a cellular level that this kind of treatment is what you can expect. So it makes you a magnet for more of the same because your system has been conditioned to accept it. It's not that you're seeking it out, but rather your internal alarm system is pretty much broken. But I want to add like that it's not broken beyond repair. You can rewire it, but you have to look inward and heal that trauma, or else it won't be. But when I say it's like broken, it no longer recognizes the red flags that everybody always is talking about. It sees the chaos and those red flags as a normal part of intimacy. And for me, that was the most terrifying realization for me. Realizing that my body no longer knew how to recognize safety. For example, like I could walk into a room with someone kind and steady, and instead of feeling calm, I felt uncomfortable, restless, and even suspicious. My muscles would tense up, my mind would start racing, and I was waiting for what was hidden, like what the hidden agenda was. But if you put me with somebody unpredictable, someone who gave me that same rush of adrenaline my trauma had trained me to expect, and suddenly it felt like chemistry. So I mistook my triggers for connection and confused danger for love. The very peace I longed for was the thing that felt most alien and threatening to me. My body was on high alert for the next explosion, and when one didn't come, it felt wrong. It felt like the calm before the storm, always, and my anxiety would just continue to grow bigger and bigger, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And here's the most brutal part. Society is often the one who gives us that message in the first place. I've been told my abuse wasn't that bad, and I was being dramatic, and I should just be grateful I was safe now. I heard things like, at least this one doesn't hit you, or you're just being too sensitive, or you're over exaggerating. It can't be that bad. These phrases delivered by well-meaning friends or family, or even doctors or the police, it taught me to minimize my own pain. And I could still, it's like vivid in my brain, the exact tone of voice, that dismissive, almost like it was impatient, when somebody said, you should just move on already, as if my pain was an inconvenience, as if the trauma wasn't still bleeding out inside of me. And every time I heard those words, it felt like a door just being slammed shut in my face. And eventually I stopped knocking. I learned to keep it all inside, and I put a brave face on to act like everything was perfectly fine. I became basically pro at performing normalcy, even though my internal world was crumbling. I learned to normalize the mistreatment. I normalized it in my mind because society either normalized my silence or didn't believe me. I stopped talking because I learned it just wasn't worth the effort. The script for abuse survivors that society has, it's a dangerous one. It's a script that says, your story is inconvenient. Your pain is messy. Please get over it and be a productive member of society. I followed that script. I smiled when I was broken inside and continuing to break. I went to work. I raised my kids. I laughed at jokes. I pretended everything was fine. And I genuinely thought that if I played that part well enough, maybe I'd start to believe it myself. But underneath, I was carrying a weight that was so fucking heavy that I felt like I was dragging chains everywhere I went. And this performance was its own kind of prison. Every compliment about how strong I was, it felt like it was a lie, because inside, I felt weaker than I have ever felt. So the pressure to appear healed, it was immense. It only reinforced that idea that my pain was something to hide, to be ashamed of. This dismissiveness, it's like it is a second layer of trauma. The abuse itself is a wound, but the silence and the disbelief, the pressure to get over it, it's a second wound. And it's often the one that keeps us trapped. It made me believe that if I couldn't even get empathy from others, then I really am the problem. That was the lie that it destroyed me. It nearly killed me. Not just what the abusers said or did to me, but what the world reinforced after. The message was clear. If no one else believed me, maybe I shouldn't believe myself either. That's how deep the silence cuts. It's not just lonely, it's crushing. It convinced me that my own perspective was invalid, that my feelings were too much, that my reality was wrong. It's a slow motion of who you are being erased. It's terrible. But then came the voice of maybe it's me. The most insidious part of the cycle, the maybe it's me shame. This is the lie I internalized, the one that made me believe I was somehow responsible for the cruelty of another person. It's a brutal shame cycle, a self-perpetuating loop of self-blame and doubt. And abusers are masters at exploiting that doubt. They use gaslighting to flip the blame and make you question your memory, your feelings, your sanity. Gaslighting is a powerful form of psychological manipulation where a person, it makes someone else question their own reality. My abusers would say things like, you're too emotional, that never happened, you're remembering it wrong. But if you hadn't done this, I wouldn't have been so mad. Or if you did it this way, then this wouldn't have happened. You're just trying to make me look bad. They reinforced that I was the problem, that I was too emotional, I was too sensitive. If I only had done it like this or like that, they wouldn't have been so angry or this wouldn't have happened. They painted themselves as the victim of my actions. And me, being exhausted and confused, I started to believe them. Gaslighting feels like standing in front of someone who is rewriting the story in real time while looking at you dead in the eyes with absolute confidence. And even though every part of you remembers what actually happened, their conviction makes you falter. It makes you second guess yourself, and it makes you wonder if maybe you really are just losing your fucking mind. The scariest part is it wasn't just their lies. It was how quickly I started to abandon myself. You start to see yourself through their eyes, and their version of you is always flawed, always wrong, and always the one to blame. You become an unreliable narrator to your own life story. And that's a terrifying place to be. It's a kind of brainwashing, and it leaves you feeling so isolated and so alone in your own fucking mind. It's fucking terrifying. And the reason this lie works so well is because you're already so tired of being the victim. You want a way out. You want to believe there's something you can change, some magic key to unlock a peaceful future, that this isn't happening to you again. So you almost try to prove yourself wrong, and you don't want to believe it. It's just sad. It's the idea that I could change the outcome was far more comforting than the terrifying truth that I was with another person who was intentionally causing me this kind of pain. It gave me a sense of control where there really was none. Because if it was me, if I was too much or not enough or just broken in the right ways, then maybe I could fix it. Maybe I could twist myself into a version that wouldn't make them angry. That thought was safer than admitting that yet again I was with someone who repeatedly chose to hurt me. Blaming myself felt less terrifying than facing the truth of them. If I could just be good enough, the abuse will stop. It's a desperate and heartbreaking bargain that you make with yourself. So I bought into their lies, and I started to believe that if I could just be a better partner or a better person or a better version of myself, the abuse would stop. I became a master at people pleasing and constantly anticipating their needs, silencing my own voice and walking on eggshells. I tried to fix us, to love them enough, be enough to be worth it for them. I eventually believed that their cruelty was a reaction to my imperfection, and if I could just perfect myself, the abuse would stop. And that's the trap, because here's the thing. I know I am not perfect. Far from it. None of us are. I know that I've messed up, I've made mistakes, and I can admit that there were definitely times that I probably made things harder than they needed to be, or I even started a fight or two. I could own that. And I, in those moments, could admit that. But my imperfections or my honest mistakes, they were never a reason for me to be abused. And the truth is, a lot of the very things I was getting yelled at for or beaten for or told I had changed over, those weren't even flaws of mine. Those were basically the crack showing from what was happening inside of my head. I was being torn apart by gaslighting, the lies, the manipulation. I was spinning and questioning my own reality. And yeah, I probably did look different. I probably did act different, but it wasn't because I was broken. It was because I was drowning. I wasn't losing myself because I was unstable. I was losing myself because they were breaking me down piece by piece. And instead of helping me, they used my unraveling to gaslight me as more proof that I was the problem. People don't always understand that people pleasing isn't kindness. It's fucking survival. It's scanning a room for danger or reshaping yourself to keep the peace or erasing your needs because your needs don't matter or they might trigger rage. I thought I was loving them well, but really I was sacrificing myself piece by piece just to make it through another day without an explosion. It's this constant, exhausting calculation, a negotiation with your own safety that leaves you with nothing left to give. Gaslighting is a tool to keep you in a cycle to make you believe that the problem isn't them, but the wound that you carry. The shame I had already felt because it became this perfect ground for each person who has ever abused me to plant their seed of doubt. They told me that my trauma was what was causing the issues, that my unhealed state was what was making them so difficult to be with. And it's a cruel and twisted form of justification, and it kept me locked in a loop of self-blame. And the worst part. It's a part of me believed them. I carried so much shame from my past that when they told me I was the broken one, it made sense. It lined up with the story that I already told myself in the dark and behind closed doors. That's why it stuck. That's why it was so hard to break free from. Because the abuse didn't just trap me in their story, it trapped me in my own story, in my own head. But the way out, it started with telling the truth. I'm living proof of this cycle. The abuse from my first relationship wasn't something I processed. I pretended I was fine. I kept it all to myself and I moved on. But silence didn't protect me. It kept me trapped. It kept me attracting the same kind of emotional and psychological chaos. I found myself in one abusive situation after another, each one a different manifestation of the same trauma. Silence feels safe in the moment. It feels like control, like you're controlling the situation. Well, if I don't talk about it, if I pretend it didn't happen, maybe I could outrun it. But silence doesn't erase what happened. It only buries it deeper. And buried trauma, it doesn't stay quiet forever. It will find a way out. For me, it came out in more relationships that mirrored the first. Different faces, but same patterns with different abuse. Every time I thought I was starting over, I was really just replaying what I hadn't faced. It was a cruel, repeated tape, and I was stuck in a rewind loop. But this time, it's different. My journey of healing has been about breaking the silence. It's been about speaking my truth, not just for my own sanity, but to help others. This is standing up against everything that tried to silence me and take that from me. It's giving resistance against a society that tells us to be quiet, to be discreet, and to be a good victim. And it's a fucking refusal to carry the shame that was never mine to begin with. The first time I spoke out, just even to people I knew or not just on social media, it wasn't polished. It wasn't pretty. My voice shook. My hands trembled. I was terrified. I was terrified that people wouldn't believe me. Or honestly, what felt worse was that I'd get dismissed again. But honestly, after that first time, I felt something that I hadn't felt in years. A release, a little bit lighter. Like pressure leaving a wound that had been festering for far too long. Speaking my truth, it hasn't been polished. It's not pretty. It's raw, but it's real. It's the only thing that could save me. It's that first time I felt a connection with my own story that I hadn't felt in years. I owned it instead of it letting it own me. That the fear was still there, but it was eclipsed with like a deep sense of empowerment. It was a moment of taking my power back and reclaiming my fucking voice. I'm breaking the silence with this podcast, with my book, with all of my writing, with my blogs, and with every person I talk to. I'm choosing to use my voice to tell the truth because the truth is that healing doesn't happen in silence. It doesn't happen in isolation. It doesn't happen when you're pretending to be fine. It happens when we name the fucking pain, when we process the trauma, and when we realize that our story is a lifeline for someone else. Every time I speak my truth and I share parts of my story, somebody else, every time somebody whispers, "Me too." And that's how I know that this isn't just about me. My story, it doesn't just belong to me. It belongs to anyone who's still stuck in the dark, convinced that they're alone and convinced that it must be them. Speaking out isn't just survival. It's healing. It's connection. It's breaking chains that kept me trapped for far too long. It's the act of transforming private shame that I had into public declaration of resilience. It's turning darkness into light. I also realized that by me speaking my truth, it gives somebody else the courage to speak theirs. It's breaking the cycle of silence, not just for myself, but for every person who's still trapped in it. And when survivors break their silence, they shine a light. They it's like a living testament to the fact that it's possible to survive and to heal. It's a terrifying thing to do, but it's the single most powerful act of self-love a survivor can perform. And here's what I know now. No, it wasn't me. And if you found yourself in more than one abusive relationship, it wasn't you either. You're not the cause. I know how easy it is to believe that lie, that you must be cursed or broken or just destined to keep ending up in the same cycle. I know what it feels like to stare at yourself in the mirror and think, I must be the fucking problem. But that's not the truth. The truth is, you are a survivor. The truth is, you are resilient. The truth is, the cycle can end with you. It ends not when you finally become good enough, but when you finally process and heal the parts of you that are buried beneath you. It ends when you stop carrying the shame, and when you stop blaming yourself, and when you refuse to let your unhealed wound be a target any longer. It ends when you decide that your silence will no longer be an abuser's weapon. The cycle doesn't end with magic. It ends with you deciding to be the end of the line. Take what you need, leave what you don't. Just remember, healing isn't pretty, but it's proof that you're still fucking here.